He lived on the corner house with the maple that shed its skin like slow rain every fall. At 70, he moved with the carefulness of someone who had learned not to rush sadness. I first noticed him at dawn, standing at his gate, as if listening for something the street had forgotten to say. He was a retired teacher, the kind who carried silence the way some men carry briefcases. I learned his name, Harold, from the mailbox, neat black letters that looked like the last line of a letter no one finished. His days followed small rituals: a kettle sighing, a newspaper folded precisely, shoes polished, though they rarely went anywhere. He watched the world pass with the patience of a librarian, yet his gaze kept drifting to the young joggers who stitched the morning together with steady breaths. He watched them the way one watches a train that used to stop here. The weight of time seemed to settle on his shoulders like a winter coat he had forgotten to take off. We would nod in passing to neighbors bound by the choreography of sidewalks. I began to notice the photos framed in his front window, faces preserved in warm summer light, a woman with a sunflower dress, a boy holding a kite, a classroom caught mid-laughter. The colors had softened, as if the years had been kind and careless all at once. Sometimes he paused by those frames, fingertips brushing the glass, then turned away with a slight bow of someone leaving a chapel. There was a quiet regret about him, not dramatic, just a steady low tide that kept pulling at the sand. He once stood outside while the morning runners streamed past like a river that refused to notice the shore. His hand lifted, not in greeting, but in a small rehearsal of reaching. Then it fell. I understood without words. He had given decades to lessons and bells, to other people's futures. Somewhere along the way, he had let the door to his own dreams swing closed without the click of a lock. In the evenings he sat on the steps, watching the sky bruise into blue. He seemed to measure days by the light that left them. When a breeze came through, it combed the silver in his hair and set the maple whispering. I wondered what he heard inside that sound. Perhaps the ache of roads not traveled. Perhaps the memory of running as a boy, legs alive, heart careless and bright. Perhaps only the soft thud of time, still moving. It began with a voice carried over the fence one morning. The neighbor's son, maybe in his 30s, tall and loose-limbed, had stopped on his run to tie a shoe. Harold lingered at the gate, eyes tracing the motion of the laces like it was some ceremony he had forgotten. The runner noticed and smiled, saying something about the beauty of mornings when your breath feels like wings. Harold chuckled, though it caught in his throat, as if laughter were a muscle unused. That was the spark. The younger man spoke casually of running, of rhythm, of how each step untangles something knotted inside. He asked Harold if he had ever tried. The old man hesitated, then admitted he had once been fast on his feet, long ago when schoolyards were arenas and bare knees carried dreams. The conversation ended there, but I saw a flicker remain in Harold's eyes, a small ember pressed against years of ash. The next morning he appeared in shoes that had forgotten how to be worn. He walked first, stiff and deliberate, the pavement echoing his doubt. Then, almost shyly, he jogged 3 hesitant strides before stopping, leaning against the fence as though the earth had tilted too suddenly. Sweat collected quick as rain. He looked both defeated and strangely alive. That became his pattern. Each day a little more distance, a little more defiance against the voice inside him whispering too late, too foolish, too old. The younger runner often joined him, offering simple advice, shorter steps, steadier breath, water, not coffee, before dawn. Harold listened, his face lined but intent, like a student again. Some days he moved easily, his body surprising him with its quiet strength. Other days he fought heaviness in his chest, legs burning with betrayal. He kept going. The sidewalk bore witness to both his triumphs and collapses. Neighbors began to notice. Some cheered, others muttered disbelief. 70 was an age for canes, not mile markers. Harold heard their doubts, though he never answered. His reply was in the persistence of his feet against the road. I watched his back straighten over the weeks, not because the years had vanished, but because he carried them differently, like medals hidden under a coat. He spoke less of the past, more of the next run. His eyes, once heavy with remembering, now held the shimmer of anticipation. Something fragile but fierce was waking in him, step by step. The morning of the marathon broke with a thin mist, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Harold stood among strangers much younger, their bodies carved by discipline, their eyes fixed on distance. His bib looked almost comical against his weathered frame, but he wore it like a badge. I watched from the crowd, heart restless, knowing this was more than a race. This was a man stepping into the very silence that had haunted him for decades. The gun sounded, the runners surged like a wave, Harold caught in their pull. His steps were careful, unhurried, as though he was asking his body permission with every stride. At mile 3, sweat clung to his shirt, his breath a rasp, but he kept steady. At mile 10, fatigue dug its nails into his legs. He slowed to a walk, then picked up again, determination stitched into every motion. Spectators clapped, their voices softening the weight he carried. Some looked at him with surprise, others with a quiet awe. By mile 20, the wall rose every runner's trial. His knees buckled, his face folded into pain, and for a moment, I feared he would stop. He leaned against the post, head bowed, eyes closed as if in prayer. I could almost hear the whisper in his mind telling him it was enough, that no one would blame him for giving in. But then he pushed off, small and trembling, each step an argument against surrender. The crowd noticed. They began to chant, strangers lending him their strength, weaving their hope into his faltering rhythm. And then, the final mile. His steps were slow, uneven, yet they carried a dignity no speed could match. The finish line appeared a banner, a promise, a horizon waiting to be crossed. His face shone with tears and salt, his body nearly breaking, but he lifted his chin. He crossed, not with triumph's roar, but with the quiet exhale of a man who had reclaimed something stolen by time. The applause swelled, but he seemed to hear only the thud of his own heart, alive, victorious. Harold did not win that day in numbers. He won in spirit. He proved that 70 is not an ending, but a doorway still open. Watching him, I felt the truth settle deep. Dreams do not belong to the young alone. They belong to anyone brave enough to chase them, even if the chase begins at the edge of life's winter. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to share it. Leave your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the quiet courage within ordinary lives. Your support helps keep these tales alive, carrying kindness from one soul to another.